This is the cattle pond near where the women were murdered. And then up here, right here, is where the men were murdered. This conforms to the prints measurements when Carlton came in. They're what we use. We don't use Mormon measurements. We don't use Mormon stories. This is where the men were. Now there's a new monument, which is a quarter mile this way on a driveway. That's where some bones were found, but that's not where the men were murdered. This is where they were slaughtered. So this marks the 3/8 of a mile, separates the men from the women and children. Where did the road come down? Well, I've looked at this quite a bit, and I believe it's right here. I'll come back to that in a moment. So the road comes down this way. The comments are made that the bodies of the women were in this gulch that paralleled the road, and this is the only place this can occur. So the road would have come down here, and I would assume rather than cross this stuff, you would come out here and cross the road and come down this way. Okay? Where this hand is where the original road could be. I've just doubted that because as much as I know that the Mormons tried to conceal every scintilla of evidence, I just have always assumed that this was where animals walked. If it is the road, then it had to come down here somewhere and cross over, and we just don't see the kind of evidence like, say, we see right in here where we know the road was. This is known to be the old road. So the question becomes, as we go north, how far does it go up this way before it crosses onto the other side of this existing road? Numerous people say that the remains were in a gully along the road, which was adjacent to this gully. And even though this land has been heavily plowed, this is still drainage. And there's no reason to alter the drainage when you're flattening out this landscape. You keep this original contour for its intended purpose, which is to drain water. Here's the monument that was put up recently. But as you can see, that's quite a ways from where the men were slaughtered. I don't know why so many bones were found here. In all my readings, in 8 years, I don't understand why these bones are here, because everything I read says these bones were gathered up and taken down south to where the original camp was. But apparently a large number of bones were found here. Why these bones would be transported a quarter of a mile, I don't know. Now there were multiple burial sites, but this is where the men were slaughtered. And up north is where most of the women were slaughtered. So I don't know why you would gather this stuff up and move it here. I don't have an explanation for that. So this has to be the gulch where the two girls ran, and then Albert and company supposedly would be up on this hill watching this, and the girls would have been down in here. Alright, so the camp is just over here, the original camp. What the Mormons seem to be trying to do is to place the slaughter in here. I don't care if you read Bagley, Hosea Gibbs, Juanita Brooks, they all use Gibbs' map, which places everything in this area. And what I think Platt was doing, and some others, was trying to make it look like everything took place in here. Right in here is where the Mormon camp was. I think they were trying to make it, they're trying to alter the crime scene, alter the evidence, destroy the evidence. They change the dates. They do everything they can. So it's not surprising they changed the location. So I said a moment ago that this would have been where Albert and would have been watching from, and just out of view is where the women and children were. But this run is a full 3/8 of a mile, which doesn't conform to the story exactly, because it seems to place it maybe a quarter of a mile. So if you were to come down from here and go up this ravine, once you get out in here, you've got about a quarter mile. However, if you're standing here and watching, you know how far a quarter mile is when you're looking at something? You can't see anything clearly. So when you listen to witnesses, let's say testifying against John D. Lee, like Nephi Johnson, he's saying that he is supposedly at the Mormon camp. Well, here's the Mormon camp. It's over half a mile away. You can't see shit. At 100 yards, you can't identify anything. So these people are lying when they place themselves at the scene and as witnesses, because their distance is according to where they place themselves, won't allow them to see up here. It doesn't pan out. Sorry, minor correction. I was saying that the Mormon camp was up here. It's just right here. And if you go on Google Earth and you're real careful, you'll find a little pond in here. Okay, so again, this is the hill that Platt and others seem to be placing the scene of the massacre at. This, to here from the camp, is 3/4 of a mile, and to here is about 2/3 of a mile. You've got a hill here and a small rise here, but this would still seem to be the gulch that Platt is confusing Josiah Gibbs with in his description of where and when and what happened. And the book has good photographs in it, but they all seem to be erroneous. So let's take out a nice copy of Gibbs, and I'll show you what Platt and company were trying to convince Gibbs of. So this is the camp. This is the ravine. It shows them walking up this. This would be the first. There's 2 hills here. This is 450 feet to this hill, and I think 750 over to this hill, which he's not really showing. All right, here's at the time, the Burgess Ranch. So he's placing everything inside this valley when in fact they're getting way up here. Okay. So this then creates what I'll show you with Bagley. So this is what Bagley does. The problem is he's saying here's a mile, but it's not. It's a half mile. And it places everything on this side of the highway. And the rim of the basin isn't here. The rim of the basin's up here. And the slaughter took place up here. In fact, the road, if we were to take this road as being, this map as being accurate, the white sand turnout would be here. What really happens is the road comes more up this way, crosses over at some point, and the women are up in here. So Bagley makes the mistake, Juanita Brooks makes the same mistake, and Gibbs is being misled by Platt. This is a typed copy of the Carleton report. I was quite fortunate to acquire that. I couldn't give you a date. I don't think it's 1857. It may date as late as the turn of the century, 1904. That doesn't mean it was typed in 1904, but it could mean that. You'll probably never see another copy of Juanita Brooks' 1950 edition, the first edition, sold for $5. I've got 3 1950 editions, but one with the slipcover. So let's find that map. And you can see that's basically a clone of Gibbs. You got to read the testimony in court, man. I've got these court transcripts. It's just one lie after another in the court transcriber, the court recorder. Rogers, he alters the testimony. He adds to and subtracts from people's testimony. Okay, this is what you have to put up with when you're trying to discover the truth of the matter. John D. Lee also remarks about the rim of the basin and it acting as this sort of concealment of what's going on behind him. But that's also misleading. First, we've got 3/8 of a mile separating them. But the rim of the basin is where the water on one side, this side here, flows north, and on the other side here flows south. And that defining event occurs right in here. So some of this water, like right here, is flowing north. Right here, it's flowing south. So this general area is where that division occurs. However, it doesn't provide the concealment John D. Lee is talking about. The distance itself does. But again, he's trying to make things, and the other Mormons are trying to make things sound more compact than they are. So here's some perspective. Over here is the camp. Mormon camp. 3/4 of a mile to the men seen. Another 3/8 up to the women. And here's where the Dunlop girls may have been killed. So if you read these testimonies, these court transcripts, or the quoted transcripts in books, people place themselves here as witnesses to events happening up here. But again, in my opinion, and the Gibbs map, which has been used by Brooks and Bagley and others, and you'll see this error in say Bagley's book. The map has errors, and it places things in here. This would then allow someone like Nephi to at least make the lie that he saw something happen in this area, when in fact it happened all up here. Now, again, I'm going to say the Mormons change the dates, the times, the place. They destroy every vestige of any identification of these people. So you have to keep all that in mind when you're trying to unravel this mess. So what we're discussing here is in Walker Turley Leonard's book on pages 201, 203. All right, so they claim, Johnson claims, he was on a ridge near the Mormon camp and gave the order for the Indians to attack. Well, that's all the way up here. All the way up here, a mile away. Where is Nephi Johnson standing? For my interpretation of this, and I'm 99% sure that I'm right, is he's claiming he's standing up here. All right? But in Walker Turley Leonard, he's in the Mormon camp being a good Mormon, and he's warning the Indians from the Mormon camp on a ridge where William Young is also standing and watching all this take place, which is a full mile. I think I said a half mile earlier. It's 7/10 of a mile to here, and another 3/8 up to here. So it's a full mile to where the women were murdered. So again, we've got Nephi Johnson standing here. Here's the hill that I've been referring to earlier. Here's the Mormon camp. And so they try to perpetrate their crime in this area. This is why Bagley makes that mistake with the map, and Juanita Brooks, and Hosea Gibbs.